Hi guys, welcome back. Something I want to talk about today is assignment success and how you go from day one in your module where you're given your assignment brief, and then how you're going to get to the end of that module with a really good high quality assessment. And there's some real simple steps to achieving success with your assignment. And whether you're doing this at degree level or, bachelor's degree or master's degree level, it's very much the same process, the steps that are involved. So what I would say to you, first of all, is you do the basics of attending classes, engaging with the online content. Most universities now are set up where all the lecture notes will be available to you and you can engage with them when you want and at a time suitable to you, because we're all tend to be working while we're studying. And really prioritize that, because you've been given this opportunity to do the module. And I always say to people, you'll get out of it what you put into it, and that really speaks volumes. Okay, now what you need to do first of all is you'll be given an assignment brief. Okay, so you read that brief, you write it down, and you try and make sense of it. Okay, so you really want to understand what they're asking of you. Then you'll be given some learning outcomes. Now your learning outcomes are what you're going to be marked against. So your learning outcomes will relate to things about the assignment. If it's a master's degree, it'll usually be some critical analysis in there. And what critical analysis means is whatever the topic is. Say, for example, it's on ventilation modes in ARDS, okay? So that's acute respiratory distress syndrome if you're an ICU nurse, intensive care nurse. So what you would need to do is get all the guidance, the latest guidelines on treating ARDS, and then you want to look for the recent papers and gather your information, read them, try and make sense of them, and then build a coherent argument, okay? Now, that sounds easy, but it can seem quite overwhelming when you start off. So whatever your topic is, say you're a student nurse and your topic is all around wound management of peripheral leg ulcers, okay? So you have to, first of all, find your papers. So once you've read your learning outcomes, you're going to go to your library, your online library, and you're going to search for the papers. And you need to get full text papers, okay? Now this takes longer than you think, but it's worth doing the groundwork here at the beginning, because if you get all your resources together and save them on a folder, you'll save a lot of time for yourself, and you won't be going back and over looking for papers. You can also ask your librarian at your university to help you, or if this full text is not available, you can request full text. All universities have that facility in UK and Ireland. Right, so you're going to collect the papers that you need. Usually the module will give you a reading list to signpost you in the right direction. If you're really lost, you can ask your module tutor or lecturer for some tips and advice. The other thing is you can look to see if there's been any PhD theses on your topic, fairly recent in the last 5 years, and they're on a whole database that you can look up online, and then you can use that as a resource and look at their references. So snowballing is where you find a really key reference and you look at their reference list and you take that information on board. So that in itself is quite an activity, quite time consuming, but you'll learn a lot from doing that. And then you'll find papers that interest you. You'll find finding literature is a skill in itself, okay? This is where you might want to use ChatGPT to help you create a search strategy on CINAHL or PubMed, and really kind of signpost you maybe some YouTube videos about how to do a good search. So you can do that first, okay? So you get all your resources together in one place, and then what you're going to do is you're going to start reading them. So I would, when your brain is fresh, I would start reading. You can do that looking for papers maybe in the evening or a certain time where you don't have as much energy, because it's more task orientated. You're not necessarily needing to think. And then save your time for when you're feeling fresh and productive, that you can do your reading of your papers. And what I like to do first is just kind of give a global view of the evidence, see what's out there. Some papers will be complete, head wreck. They won't make any sense. I'm doing my PhD now. I've worked in education and academia. Still, sometimes papers throw me, and I think this is so confusing. And it can take up to 7 times to really understand a research paper. So don't be hard on yourself. If it feels very difficult, start somewhere else. There's usually journals that are more user-friendly. Again, you could ask ChatGPT what journals are more user-friendly in terms of their explanation and how they're presented. And also, you can't necessarily choose whether you're going to include qualitative or quantitative research in your papers. But some people's brains tend to favor one. So some people will be more prone to look at quantitative research and really understand the numbers, love the big participant numbers, really understand the significance of a study that was done, and their brain just goes to that. They really understand it. And then some people will be drawn more to qualitative research, such as myself. I'm just more drawn to it. I just find it easier to understand, and I feel it provokes more thoughts in me. So I'm always drawn to that, and I would start with that to build up my confidence. But I can't ignore the quantitative or the mixed method papers. So you have to draw out of them what you can. And this is where you could use critical appraisal tools to help you to do that. And again, they're free online. You could use the CASP tools, which are really user-friendly. And this is where I would ask ChatGPT to find me a really good tutorial on doing a critical appraisal of a nursing paper or a medical paper, because we borrow a lot of their content for our learning and vice versa. So that's kind of where you are now, getting all your data together. And the next thing is you want to start writing. So for any assignment, you're going to have an introduction, a middle, and an end, okay? The introduction is really, you could write that straight away, okay? An introductory paragraph is where you're introducing the reader to what this assignment is about, okay? So remember, at university level, your tutor, if I had set the module, if I was teaching that module and this was this assessment I was teaching you, I would know it inside out. So, you think, why do I need to tell the tutor what's the introduction? But you have to remember, in the university setting, your assignment will go to a second marker and an external examiner who needs to have that introduction. And no matter what you do as you continue on your journey with nursing, it's a lifelong education. You always have to break it down and introduce the topics that people understand it. If you take any research paper and read the beginning paragraph, you'll be able to make sense of it. I'd say 9 times out of 10, they break it down and really simplify it so that you could pick it up and understand the beginning of it. And that's what we want from your introduction, where you're going to almost regurgitate what the learning outcomes are, but not just copying and pasting. You're going to break it down into your own words and introduce the topic and tell us what this is about and the learning outcomes that will be met. And then if there was 4 learning outcomes, I would do subheadings within the assignment, and then I would start writing under those 4 areas. And then towards the end, I would do recommendations, and they can be something that you come up with yourself, or they could be referenced from the papers that you've used. So as a result of you reading and learning all about your topic, say for example, go back to the ulcers, the peripheral ulcers, that's my dog, the peripheral ulcers, I would do recommendations of what's best practice depending on the presentation of the leg ulcer. And then your recommendations, they don't necessarily have to be referenced if there's something you're doing yourself. And then the very last bit, the conclusion. This is really important. There should be no new information in the conclusion. It is just a summary of what you've learned from doing the work, okay? It's not something you can write at the beginning. I remember some students said to me, oh, I've done the introduction and the conclusion paragraphs and I'm kind of stuck in the middle. But you shouldn't be able to write the conclusion until you've written the body of your assignment, because you're doing the key points of what you've learned. What have you learned from doing this work? Okay, so you can only do that well if you've actually done the assignment. And this is something that lecturers are seeing when it comes to students using AI to write their essays. Number one, the intelligence is building very quickly to safety net students from doing that. So they're working on software to detect people who've got that off ChatGPT. Okay, that is something that's being worked on. I just wouldn't go down that road. I would use it to help you with, you know, finding videos like this or your search strategy or pointers, but I would never ask it to write your work and then submit it on your behalf, because that's plagiarism. It's just not worth it. One, if you get caught, you can be removed from your degree, lose your nurse registration from your registration board. And two, you're only kind of fooling yourself. You wouldn't want a healthcare professional looking after you who had used ChatGPT for their learning, okay? You've got to do the groundwork. You've got to understand what's right from what's wrong and how to interpret academic papers, okay? You've got to get those ground skills, those foundation skills in place. And then there's always, so the way we mark, you have your learning outcomes, they're set in a rubric, and a rubric is like a graph of marking, and you have your 90 to 100, you have your 80 to 90, and so on. So usually for bachelor degree, it's 40% and above as a pass, and then for master's level in the UK, it's 50% and above as a pass. So you'll see, you can ask your lecturer for that rubric. It should be available to you, or it'll be made available to you if you ask for it. And then you can see what they're looking for. So if you're looking for 70% and above, which will be a first class or a distinction, you're looking for a really good argument with really good references, up-to-date references, or key seminal papers involved in that assignment, and you've really read around the topic and you know a lot about it, okay? So it's usually things like that. And then there'll be a chunk of marks, which I say to students to just get in the bag. You can guarantee you'll get 10 or 15 marks out of 100 for your presentation. So your layout, having that introduction, your subheadings, your recommendations, your conclusion, a beautiful reference list. Again, you can use AI software to help you do your reference list and have that done really well. And you then can use your spell check on Word. That's really good now. Or you can use other tools to help you with your writing. And you don't want to, this is something, I remember I was helping a student who actually wasn't doing healthcare, was doing a completely different topic. And they were new to academic writing, had not gone to university after school, had worked professionally for 20 years and then went back to do a degree. And I just was having a chat, and, you know, because I'm in academia, I was telling them what I do know. And actually a lot of this crossed over to all subjects. And what he had said to me is, oh, well, I know a lot about my job and my experience and I'm writing about that. And he got really bad feedback. He didn't do very well. And I said, well, if you're just going to write about what you know, you don't need to do a degree for that. You can, if you're not willing to learn new information, then it's kind of pointless. That's not what you're here for. To do a module or a degree, you want to take on new information, learn what the experts are saying, other people in the field, your colleagues, what they've written before you, and we want to advance our practice. We want to advance nursing practice and have evidence underpinning the care that we provide, because we know that that's best care. So you're taking on what you know from your experience, from your job, but you're going to try and find the evidence to either support that or maybe refute it. Maybe actually something's outdated and we shouldn't be doing it anymore, or maybe there's not a lot of research on a topic. Okay, that's also a possibility. But you need to find the literature and you need to make your argument. So if you really believe, I've seen them use honey dressings in practice on ulcers and they had a really good effect on the ulcers. And then as someone in my class said, oh no, I've seen the silver dressings used on ulcers and that was amazing, okay? You can't write that in an essay. You've got to look at the evidence behind honey and silver dressings and then present it as an argument, an academic argument, okay? And that's where you'll get your points, because you're showing you've read, you've understood, and you can present that in a coherent argument. And if you do those things, you're going to have a really good piece of work. But there's no shortcuts for writing essays. And sometimes you'll have people say, there's always someone who says, oh, one, I got ChatGPT to write it for me, or two, I just did it the day before and I did 3,000 words. I don't know how they can do that, because the reference list alone is going to take you a long time to find your references. Usually those people might have got everything in advance. They've got all their resources. They've done a global view of the evidence, and then they can just hyper focus for a full day and write an essay. Okay. If you don't work like that, don't think, oh, I can leave it till the day before. Just plan your time. And if you do all that background work, you can write a really good assignment. Usually your lecturers will look at a draft for you, or you could ask them to look at a draft, or they might look at it 500 words for you to see your writing, and take advantage of that. And the other thing is, I've said this in my previous video, universities are really cracking down on students using AI inappropriately. We're all for using it responsibly and ethically, especially in the nursing world. But you don't want to plagiarize yourself with ChatGPT or any other one. So usually what's happening now is you do your assignment, and then you will have to do a presentation on it, or you will be questioned on your assignment to make sure you've actually done it. And that will be maybe 50% of the total marks for the module. And if you actually do the work yourself and do the assignment, when it comes to that questioning, like a verbal exam or presentation, you'll have the work done. You'll just fly through it. It'll just be a case of one day to tidy things up, get it right, and then you will just be able to answer from what you've learned, and that won't be an issue. If you've used ChatGPT and you're trying to chance it and submit, one, if you're caught for plagiarism, that has all its implications, or two, when it comes to the questioning, you're just not going to have a clue, and this is where people are getting caught out. So there's no substitute for hard work. I say that all the time. Please do leave any comments in the questions if you have, and I wish you good luck with your assignments, and try and enjoy the process. See it as a challenge, and you'll feel amazing once it's done and you pass, and you can move on to the next thing. Bye.